Hi, this is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy, and I'm here today with Peggy Fucillo, and we're going to talk about some exciting news that she has. So welcome, Peggy. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you again for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. So just for, for a little bit of a starter, why don't you tell everybody, where you're from and just a bit about your Italian roots?
Okay. I'm from the North End in Boston, and my parents are from Italy, from Campania, one from Benevento area, and the other one from Avellino area, specifically Cusano. And I'm booking a trip for Sicily in September, so that's
super. Well, we're going to be just a couple of nights in Calabria and then off to Puglia, because when we made the trip last year, we didn't go to my mom's hometown. So
Oh, you'll have fun then.
yeah. Since then I found out that I have more cousins in Toronto, which is only about a half hour from Torito. So I'm gonna visit them, and then we'll go to mom's hometown, and then maybe off to Rosetto. So we'll see how that goes. But that's great. When are you going to be there?
Well, I don't know if you've looked at the prices of the trips. They're waiting for them to kind of go down. I don't
know if they're going to go down. That's the problem.
Well, I booked another trip because it's trip time, and for a little farther out. And it was the cheapest flight I ever got, and it was American Airlines. So, I mean, I don't know how that happened, but I, pressed okay right away on that one. But this was outrageous, and I tried various airlines, but I'll try some more and see. But I'm shooting for September. When did you say you were going?
We're going to be there the 13th through the 26th.
Of September?
September, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I used to spend my summers in Italy in San Sorcio. Even that was the mountains. It's hot. You don't go to Italy in July or August. So September, October, I'm aiming for. So that'll be great. First time I've been there in a long time.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So since we spoke last, you have written a book.
Yes, I
have. And for everybody, I know what the book's about, but for everybody who's listening, what's the book about?
Basically, it's stories from me growing up in the North End, my parents' stories from coming from Italy, along with the grandparents, and a little bit about genealogy. There's 10 chapters all broken down, and my relatives. And there's one chapter, 8, is like, we would call it immediate comic relief. And that is sayings my mother had to say to me. So I'll read a couple of them later, because when I was compiling them, my relatives would be throwing in a couple. Don't forget to say this one, and don't forget to say that one. But that was the fun part of doing the book, was remembering those, because they're gems.
Yeah, I probably have a few of those myself, going way back. So what prompted you to write the book in the first place?
Basically, it was to remember my family. And I always had that in me. We talked about that before, about finding out about who's who, where they're from, etc. And being in touch with my relatives here. But then when I was in grad school, we did oral history. And I did oral history in the North End, specifically about women's political interests, the people who had started voting right in the 1920s, and when women got the right to vote. But as years went on, and I got older, and I knew some people like Anthony Riccio, he said one sentence to me that just resonated, and it was, and then there was no one to ask.
Mm.
And at that point, my uncle, who was Uncle Tony, he's featured, he got almost a whole chapter in the book. He lived to be 100, 2 months shy of 100. And he had all the stories and he was gone.
Yeah.
And so that just resonated with me and made me want to tell more. I like writing. I'm not a great writer, but I can, make a paragraph. So when I was teaching students from all over the world, because I was teaching English as a second language, and I had advanced students, and they were learning how to write, although they were literate in their own language. And one of the first things you teach is, write from your heart, write about something because that way, you're not thinking about other stuff. You're just writing what's already in your head. You don't have to research it. So as an exemplar, I gave them a very short 5-paragraph essay on my grandmother. That's what started it all. And that was 2018, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's, I think besides going back to the hometown, I think that's one of the most important things for anybody who's doing genealogy, or even if they're not, to write down those stories so we don't lose it. You mentioned Anthony, who's fantastic at that. And he's the one who spurred me on to write my book. And Uccelli, another person who wrote about his family, and Dr. Visco, who's from my hometown on College Point, and whom I never knew. I knew his parents' drugstore, but I didn't know him. He's a little bit older than me. But that's whether you want to publish it or not. It's very, very important now as we're all getting older. We remember the people who came over firsthand, but that's lost now,
Right. There's just a part of telling the story, even if my daughter or my nieces and nephews, they can't comprehend it right at that time or take value in it at that time that I'm telling the stories. Like when I sent everybody the book, it's probably, Lord knows where it is, but it hasn't been read yet. But when it is, they'll have it. And then might be later on in their life that they get what people went through. To me, as a historian, and a political scientist, that's what I actually went to school for. That is so much should be part of your culture. That is what culture is. So those stories have to be remembered, and hopefully they're understood by other people as well.
Well, yeah. And I think, and that's what I did in some of my book, of reliving how I grew up. I think people don't realize, times were tough. It wasn't so much for me, because we were like middle class, but my mother and stuff. But there was also joy. There's no joy anymore. Everybody's friggin' miserable.
I know.
And we had joy. I mean,
yeah,
10 years old, 8, 9, 10 years old, Sunday, you look forward to going to grandma's and seeing your cousins, which cousins were going to be there, and connecting with them. Or if you were lucky enough, you live near your cousins. We had something to look forward to other than looking at the stupid phone all day.
Yeah, there's a whole difference there. And hopefully that will kind of do a 180 somehow, because that just drives me nuts. I think that when you start, if you have the idea that you want to chronicle, and you're just overwhelmed, because that's what I hear from people when I talk to them. And how do I start? I don't know. I can't write. All of there's not excuses. It's just people who feel that they do not have the capacity, but you do. You do have the capacity. It's not going to, come out like Maya Angelou, but it's going to be, your words, and they need to be recorded. And again, they can be recorded as well. You know, some people can't write. I'm working with a group of seniors, and they have difficulty for a variety of health reasons to write. So everything is done on tape. So there's no stopping people from doing it, no matter where you feel you are on the scale of a writer. And people also are mentoring people now. I'm going to be working in a part of Boston and doing 3 separate workshops on one genealogy. That'll probably be the end, but one, choosing what you want to write about. And I think one of the things when you're writing a book, here, that's the book. And let me just say this is my mother. I've had my cousins call me up and say, I don't remember you in that dress. No, that was like 1917. I don't think you would remember me then. But the idea is pick something, write about it, and brainstorm. It's a, you know, it's the beginning piece. So I feel that I was very lucky that my mother had so many pictures. One of my friends that we're working on the 150th anniversary of our church in the North End, he said, I love your book because it has so many pictures. And I was like, because it brought back memories. I'm assuming, you know, that's what he meant. But this is going to be part of preserving our culture, is to have those pictures. And my mother has them. I mean, I think last time you saw her kindergarten picture.
Yeah.
It was like incredible. And so that was a really important piece. That is just to get over that fear. I think once you get over that fear, you can sail. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and if I remember correctly, you didn't think you could write a book either. So
I was stuck. I was stuck with grandma, you
yeah.
know, and so what I did, just to, you know, one of the hard parts of writing, I think the first, this isn't in order, this is in order of how hard it was the editing. And
Yes. Yeah.
it's painful. It's really painful. And I have written a book before, but it was not on the computer. I rather do it. I don't like doing it on the computer because something gets lost, it moves, you don't see the whole picture. But anyway, the editing, going back and forth, speaking with someone who was terrific, by the way, but the editing was hard. The other part was, where does everything fit in? You know, the organization.
Mhm.
And, you know, I started with my grandmother, and I said, no, I can't jump right in. You know, I have to put some context. We call it in education background knowledge. People aren't going to know anything about the North End, what it looks like, you know. And so I did that. And then I started talking about the institutions like church, the North End, church is number one, school, stores, and a little bit of the society of the North End. And it included the crime families. It included, I call him Quahog Man. Quahog Man was on Salem Street where you bought everything. And Quahog Man had a push cart and he sold quahogs. And we went there every Friday morning to buy 6 quahogs for Friday night dinner because he had to eat fish.
Mhm.
And that was just the appetizer. But so there was a sense of that. Also, I put in, again, that some of these things are hidden. They're not always talked about. The domestic abuse, alcohol, when I was growing up, drugs started to become a thing. But, back in the day when my mother came here, that wasn't part of the equation. But domestic abuse was.
Mm.
So when I started doing this, I don't know if no, I didn't tell you. I had to ask my relatives permission to what I could put in the book, because the book, it's titled My North End Family Stories, La Gioia y el Dolore, the joy and the sorrow, because this isn't all a cakewalk here. And there was a lot of sorrow, and that was very, very hard. It's like I was talking to another writer, and I said, okay, the next book, is there such a thing as a comedy book? I don't want to do this anymore, Maybe I could just write chapter 8, all of the cute sayings or something, because there was a lot of sorrow. And to see at a young age what I saw, or more profoundly what my mother saw, that affected her whole life. And it was hard to write. It was hard to write. So then I did all the family. I did my mother, my father, my grandmother. Those all had chapters. Then I did the relatives. They had chapters. And then I had to get, release forms practically. Can I write about so-and-so? I didn't put much in, but, just said that they weren't good people. And then I had to take a break,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I came up with, okay, so you want to leave, there's the door. If you go out, you're home at 11, or you'll never go out again. These are the things. One of my favorites was, Ma, can I, Ma was the word we used.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, too. Yeah.
Ma or mama, and Ma, I got accepted to college. Can I live in the dorm? Answer, are you trying to put me in an early grade? I mean, these are the things. And I've had some people like Mary Ann Mazzano, she read that part and she thought it was hysterical. So, maybe that's where I'm going to go next. But writing about a lot of sorrow was the hardest part, I would say.
Yeah, well, the book I just finished, and for anybody listening, if you're thinking about writing a book and you want to publish, contact me or Peggy. We'll tell you where to go. Sandra is just fantastic. Big help to both of us. But my second book is about, sort of an autobiography, but more about my work experience, and it is kind of funny. I didn't put anything. There were a lot of bad things that happened, and I didn't, but I tried to tell some of my funny stories and stuff like that. But, my mother always used to tell us, what are neighbors going to think?
Yes, I have that in the book.
Yeah, see,
Definitely. Yeah.
Go kiss your aunt. We go kiss your aunt. What are the neighbors going to think?
Yeah. I think the way I phrased it is, what are people going to think? Because she had a more universal gift.
You're right.
Oh my God. And the house being cleaned, like it couldn't get any cleaner, but it was a mess. The house was a mess.
Yeah, my mother used to clean for the cleaning lady. She had a cleaning lady who would come in like, once every 2, whatever, to do some of the big stuff or whatever. And she'd be cleaning before the cleaning lady showed up. But yeah, I think that's the typical Italian mom. Everything had to be spotless,
Yes, yeah, definitely so. Definitely so. So when I think about, what are you going to write about next? Because basically I want to stick with this. But I haven't quite, like, I thought, well, I could write about, obviously with permission, some of my students through the years. And that would have a big market, obviously. And I said, I don't think I can do that. I think it's too hard. Not for me to write it, but mentally to do it.
Mm.
There's so many memories. Some of the, they weren't happy endings. So I think light and airy might be, you know, what I'll go, Bambi. No, Bambi's mother died, whatever. But something is something that's interesting and has a market. And I did want to talk about that was when you're writing a book about the North End. Now, this, you know, I'm not the only book on the shelf, but there are so many books about food. There's so many books about the old history, Paul Revere, blah, blah, blah. So I wanted to narrow the topic. And again, when you're teaching writing, you have to do that. You know, you have, but you have to know who your audience is. I have a friend who's a writer, and I was trying to pick out the do the cover. Cover was like, I am not a graphic designer. I, you know, don't pretend that has something to do with the computer. So, you know, not too good. But when I came across my mother's communion picture, I started to cry. I said, this is the picture, you know, this is the one that's going on there. So I think that those things are exact. If you get that emotional connection, then that's the route you should take.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, I had my front cover for a long time for Farmers and Nobles, and then I was struggling with the back cover, and then when we came after we went to Italy, and I met my dad's first cousin, actually, of a couple of them, which I never knew existed. When we came back, he sent me the photograph that my grandmother had sent to her father around 1920, 1919, 1920. And on the back, in Italian, of course, it said, "From your dear daughter to your dear father, may you never forget." And I was like, you know, this is the back cover because,
Oh, yeah.
you know, like you said, the emotion.
Mm.
Here's this woman who came, left. She knew she was never going to see her father again.
Mhm.
You know, so that's you know, that was like, wow. So I have the picture, and then I have her handwriting on the back, and she signed it. Her name was Luigia. She signed it, Gigina. And I had heard that before, but I never really knew. But that must have been, you know, her father's pet name for her.
Mhm.
So it was, yeah, it was like really, really, you know, emotional. So before we go, where can I know I'm going to carry the book? I'm going to, by the time this is done, I should have it set up and people could come to my website and purchase the book. But where else can they find the book?
They can find it on all of the uh, like Amazon and all of that. But unfortunately, they, let's see, how would I phrase this? You can get it a lot less, you can get it less expensive either through me or through someone like you, through individual vendors. There's 3 in the North End, a lot in Massachusetts that I went personally to and asked them to carry the book. And they have. And I've done, you know, talks in the library. And I think when you read chapters, or, you know, when you're doing a book talk and you just write a little bit, read a little bit about, you know, this happened to be about my mother. And one of the people in the audience said, wow, your mother was, she was like incredible. How did she do all of this? And I'm like, are we talking about the same lady that drove me crazy? You know, I realized what I put in the book, you know, I didn't put the, you know, typical mother and daughter stuff, but of what she did. And one example was during World War II, if you didn't become a citizen, and, you know, my people came and they didn't become citizens. It just wasn't a big deal to become a citizen. But during World War II, you'd get deported if you didn't become a citizen. There was a threat out there. And so she was the one that rounded up all of the people in our family and other places to be the co-signer to go to not naturalization, but the intention. There's steps to become a citizen.
Yeah, right.
So she's the one, the name that signed on everything. you
Oh,
know.
wow.
But she'll, she had like a little social service agency out of Fleet Street. Go to her, she'll help you, and I never realized how, until I went into this deeper, that, yeah, she wasn't the one saying, send me to an early grave. She was helping
It was
people
helping people. Yeah.
all the time, all the time. And when that person asked me that this was in the North End Library, and I just went, yeah, she goes, well, where did she get that? I said, I think it was from her hard life. And she just never forgot it, which is something we should all never forget, is what our ancestors, our immediate family went through to get to where we are.
Yeah, exactly. They, like you said before, there were a lot of sacrifices, and just coming here and everything. Well, this has been great, Peggy. I appreciate it, and we'll get the book out there for everybody to read.
Yes, and I'm available to come and talk to you if you're local.
Ah, cool.
So, yeah, that's
Uh,
great. Thank you. It's been a little bit over a year since I was last here saying,
yeah,
and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I knew it was something about my grandmother, but other than that, I didn't know. So yeah, it all came together.
yeah, it comes together. All right, take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, you take care too.
Hi, everyone. This is Bob Sorrentino, just letting you know that my new book, Farmers and Nobles, is now available for sale on www.italiangenealogy.blog/Farmers and Nobles, or you can find the link in the podcast notes. Thanks for listening.